Welcome to the deep dive. We're kicking things off today with, well, a pretty seismic admission from the top of the U.S. auto industry.
Yeah, Ford CEO Jim Farley, he didn't just sound concerned about EV competition.
No, he called the speed and scale of what China's doing with EVs the most humbling thing I've ever seen. Strong words.
Incredibly strong. And humbling is really the word you need to focus on here. It signals this almost existential threat facing Detroit.
So today, we're diving into the sources that really spell out why Farley is sounding these alarms so loudly.
Exactly. Our mission here is to break down the three main areas he pointed to. Their tech, which he says is superior, the massive cost advantage, and, surprisingly, the quality, too.
And we really have to start with the sheer scale, because this isn't some slow burn. It feels more like an industry shift happening incredibly fast.
It does.
The number that just jumps out, the one you really need to keep in mind, is this. China, right now. They manufacture something like 70% of all electric vehicles sold globally.
70%. That's dominance, plain and simple. Industry control, really.
It absolutely is. And the sources we looked at show the problem runs much deeper than just who's putting the cars together on the assembly line.
Right. Farley had this really key conversation, apparently, with Ford's chief EV officer, Doug Fields.
Ah, Fields, the
Yeah.
guy from Tesla. And he worked on the Apple Car project too, right? A heavy hitter.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And Fields basically gave Farley the cold, hard truth, the diagnosis Ford maybe didn't want but needed to hear.
And it sounds like it's pretty brutal. Fields apparently told Farley that Ford's core internal systems, we're talking part releases, IT infrastructure, even their CAD design software,
Yeah.
are 25 years uncompetitive compared to rivals like BYD in China.
25 years. Just stop and think about that for a second. In technology years, that's like multiple generations.
It really puts it in perspective.
It suggests Ford isn't just playing catch-up on battery tech or software features. Their fundamental operating system, the way they design and build cars, is maybe stuck somewhere back in the late 90s or early 2000s.
While their competitors are using these hyper-modern integrated systems that let them iterate designs almost instantly.
Exactly. If you're starting 25 years behind on the process, you're lagging before you even, design the first part.
And that underlying weakness, that structural gap, seems to be why Farley is framing this in such stark terms, like corporate survival.
He literally said, according to the sources, if we lose this, we do not have a future Ford.
Wow.
And he called the Chinese EV market the 700-pound gorilla, making it clear that right now Tesla, GM, Ford, they don't really have a solid competitive answer in that arena.
And this wasn't just based on reports, right? He actually got his hands on the competition.
He did. The sources say he imported 5 different Chinese EVs, had his teams tear them down, drove them himself expensively.
And his takeaway.
Unequivocal. He concluded their cost, their quality, and their technology were, in his words, far superior to what I see in the West.
Okay, far superior. Let's unpack that. Maybe start with the technology stack. That seems like a place the Western automakers usually feel confident.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But the picture painted is quite different. While we're over here still debating Apple CarPlay versus Android Auto integration,
Right, which system to let in?
Chinese manufacturers seem to have leaped ahead by building the whole cockpit software stack themselves, integrating major Chinese tech players natively.
So less about partnerships, more about owning the whole experience.
Precisely. We're talking giants like Huawei and Xiaomi being baked into every car, according to Farley. It's not like here where the car company uses, say, Google's Android Automotive OS. There, they own it.
And that ownership allows for what? What does the driver actually experience?
Seamlessness, mostly. Farley noted things like automatic phone mirroring, no awkward pairing process, your digital life just shows up.
Okay, that's nice.
But also more advanced stuff. An integrated AI companion, he called it like a chat GPT equivalent in China, right in the car. Automatic payment systems built in. Even facial recognition that knows who's in which seat and adjusts everything for them.
Facial recognition per seat, that's quite specific.
It shows the level of integration they're achieving. Because they control the whole system end to end, they can update it constantly over the air and add these features much more easily than Western companies juggling third-party software.
It sounds like a much more unified digital experience.
It seems so, and it was pretty telling that Farley apparently really liked driving the Xiaomi SU7, admitted he didn't want to give up the car.
Coming from the CEO of Ford, that says a lot.
It really does. It underlines that the tech threat is very real. But, if tech is one side of the coin.
The other side has to be cost. And this sounds like maybe the even bigger mountain to climb.
I think it is, because the sources suggest the Chinese cost advantage isn't just about, say, cheaper labor. It's structural. It's fundamental.
Okay, explain that. What's the core difference?
The key phrase is vertical integration. Think about how Ford or GM work today. They're largely assemblers, right? They manage this incredibly complex web of thousands of independent suppliers for every little part.
Relying on the lowest bidder for each component, essentially.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with companies like BYD. BYD started as a battery company. They still make their own battery cells, they develop their own chips, design their own motors, and then they assemble the final car.
So they control the whole chain.
Pretty much the entire value chain. It's almost like going back to Henry Ford's original vision, owning the rubber plantations, the steel mills, everything.
And doing that cuts out what layers of profit for suppliers.
Yes, cuts out supplier profit margins, reduces complexity, makes them way less vulnerable to supply chain disruptions or tough price negotiations with suppliers. They control their own destiny, cost-wise.
And the result we see is this absolutely shocking price difference. You look at the U.S. market, a new EV, you're realistically starting around $40,000, maybe $60,000 for something popular like a truck. Meanwhile, BYD is selling their Seagull model in China and other markets for under $10,000.
Sub $10,000. It's not just a bit cheaper, it's a different category of vehicle cost altogether, like a quarter of the price of a typical Western EV.
Which completely changes the game, doesn't it?
Radically. It
Right.
shifts the whole competitive landscape. The fight isn't just, can you build an EV anymore? It's, can you build a good EV and sell it profitably for under $25,000?
And if your starting price is $40,
You're not even in that game. You have a fundamental structural cost problem compared to your main competitors globally.
now, okay, the U.S. currently has those huge 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs. That's a factor, surely.
It's definitely a factor. It's a shield, as the sources point out. It buys time for Ford, for GM, for the U.S. industry.
But it doesn't fix the underlying issue.
No, that's the core warning coming through from Farley and others. Tariffs don't magically update Ford's 25-year-old IT systems. They don't suddenly give Ford vertical integration over batteries.
They just delay the inevitable confrontation with a competitor that operates on a completely different economic model.
Exactly. They postpone the exposure. They don't eliminate the disparity.
So Ford sees this massive gap, this existential threat. What's the plan? How does a giant company like Ford even begin to tackle a 25-year lag and this kind of cost difference?
Well, their main answer seems to be this skunkworks approach.
Skunkworks, like the old Lockheed Secret projects.
Kinda, yeah. They've set up a small, supposedly very agile team based out in California, led by Doug Fields, actually.
Bringing him in to lead the counterattack.
Seems like it. And the mission for this team is laser-focused. Develop a truly low-cost EV platform. They're meant to operate like a nimble startup outside the main Ford bureaucracy.
And how are they trying to get the costs down?
The idea is to obsess over the cost of every single component, basically learning from the Chinese approach the same way they learned by tearing down those imported cars, driving costs out piece by piece.
Trying to reverse engineer the cost savings, in a way.
Yeah.
But even with this focused team, the timeline doesn't sound immediate.
No, it doesn't. The reports suggest Ford's next-gen affordable platform, the result of this skunkworks effort, probably won't reach customers until 2027.
2027, that's still, what, 3 years away? Minimum?
At least. And in those 3 years, you can bet companies like BYD won't be standing still. They'll be refining their processes, their tech, their vertical integration even further.
Which naturally leads to some skepticism, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. The sources highlight quite a bit of pushback, both inside and outside Ford. Some critics wonder if that 25-year gap number was maybe a bit dramatic, like managing expectations or grabbing headlines.
Setting the bar low, perhaps?
Perhaps. But the really tough criticism seems focused on the economics. Can Ford ever truly match those Chinese costs, given U.S. labor agreements, existing supply chains, regulations, without just massive ongoing government help?
It seems like a huge structural hurdle to overcome, even with a skunkworks team.
It really does.
Yeah.
And, leadership choices are also getting scrutinized. There's criticism mentioned about Farley's own compensation, $24 million, while the company is bleeding billions on its current EV efforts, like the Mach-E and the Lightning.
That's always a tough look when you're asking for fundamental change and warning about survival.
It is. Then there's the definition of affordable. What does that even mean to Ford?
Good question. Are we talking truly cheap, like that $10 BYD, or just cheaper than a $60 K Lightning.
Exactly. The worry is that this low-cost platform might still result in cars landing in that $40,000 to $60,000 range.
Which, let's be honest, isn't what most people think of as affordable. They want something like an electric Ford Maverick, maybe $25,000, $30,000 tops.
Right. And if Ford's low-cost effort still ends up near 40K, it suggests they maybe haven't fundamentally cracked the code on competing at the real mass market value end of the spectrum yet.
And layered on top of all this internal challenge is the external pressure on materials, right? The battery supply chain.
Yes, that's the other vice tightening. China has strategically built up control over critical parts of the battery supply chain. We're talking more than half of the world's lithium-ion battery production capacity.
That's not just a manufacturing lead. That sounds like strategic control.
It absolutely is. It gives Chinese companies immense leverage. They can potentially dictate battery cell pricing, and crucially, they can allocate the newest, most efficient battery chemistries to their own car companies first.
Before any surplus might get exported to competitors like Ford or GM.
Precisely. It helps lock in their cost advantage and their technology lead in batteries. And this wasn't an accident. Sources point out this has been a focused part of China's national economic strategy for well over a decade, since around 2007.
So bringing it all together, the core insight seems to be it's not about if companies can make EVs anymore.
No, the game has shifted. It's about who can make them profitably at scale, especially at those crucial sub-$25,000 price points for the global mass market.
And if Ford's big push for affordability is still aiming, potentially, near 40K, and isn't ready until 2027.
And then they're arguably still not positioned to compete where the massive global volume and ultimately value is going to be. That fundamental economic gap, the $10K car versus the $40K car, is the reality the tariffs are currently shielding the U.S. market from, but not solving.
Which leaves the U.S., and maybe Europe too, with some really tough choices ahead.
It really does.
So let's leave you, the listener, with this question to mull over as this EV race just keeps accelerating. We know tariffs are buying time, but they don't fix that underlying cost and technology gap. So is there a risk that this American protectionism, shielding the domestic industry from these genuinely advanced, low-cost Chinese EVs, could it eventually just cut U.S. consumers off permanently from the global leader in affordable electric transport?
Are we essentially choosing to protect domestic jobs and companies, which is understandable, at the cost of denying consumers access to potentially much more affordable and maybe even better value vehicles?
It's a complex trade-off with huge implications, something to definitely keep thinking about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into a really critical moment for the auto industry and the future of companies like Ford.
It's been fascinating to unpack.
If you found this discussion valuable, please make sure you hit that follow button right now so you don't miss our future deep dives into the key stories and trends shaping our world. We appreciate you tuning in.